Dixie. This is The Legend. 105.3, 95.3. WDXE.
That's us, WDXE, and Stan Pierchoski's in. It is time for the Pierchoski Law Hour. That's right. Did a microphone fall off there?
It's a little loose.
A little loose.
Good morning, Jeff.
Yeah, good morning. How are you?
Good, good.
It is Friday, and Estate Plan Stan, as I like to refer to you.
With our hour called Bulletproof Estate Planning.
That's right, Bulletproof Estate Plan.
We are here again. Seems
Man,
like
it's Friday, and you've had a big week.
have had a big week.
Yeah, and what do you got? What do you got on the plate for the weekend? This coming weekend?
Well, for the weekend, just the stuff that piddle around with some projects around the house, trying to get the furnace ready.
Well,
for
see,
this
I was
cold
fishing
weather.
to see if he was going to watch football.
Oh, I watch some football, not like I used to.
Of course,
but-
it's the Tennessee-Alabama weekend.
Oh, my wife will be big on that one. so,
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I'm just
It'll be on.
Yeah.
I'll be passing through lots of times, but yeah.
a lot of SEC games this weekend that are key games, of course, for those of us who keep up with that kind of stuff. And of course, it's all over. But anyway, good. The weather's awesome.
Yeah.
Right now, just
Nice,
beautiful.
Nice and cool. A little foggy this morning, but it was lifting, and I noticed that right on the other side of the fog is some really nice blue sky.
Oh yeah.
So it looks good.
Yeah. Did you run into some fog on the way in this morning?
Yeah, it was not bad, but there was some.
Yeah. We had some early this morning too. You had your seminar yesterday.
I did over in Pulaski at the Star Theater. It was 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And it was just a banner turnout. I mean, I think everybody that signed up came, had a few walk-ins. They're actually, our seating arrangement was a little different over there because normally I put up tables and chairs.
Yeah.
But they're performing the play Dracula. And it's
Oh,
this weekend and
Is
next
that
weekend.
this weekend? Okay.
And it actually opened last Friday, but it's this weekend and next weekend too. And they're doing a new experiment. We're doing the Dracula in the round, which means in the middle of all the audience, we put a small stage, and the seats are all around it on all sides.
Okay,
There's
okay.
no stage with a curtain. And so I didn't want to disturb all that. Actually, the real truth is I didn't want to have to take it down and put it all back. So we just sort of moved what was on the little platforms and put my little table up with my TV and PowerPoint, and then everybody kind of sat in those chairs, so we just didn't disturb it much. So it was a little different format, but it was great. We had, like I said, we had a very good attendance, a lot of good questions. I mean, I think I told you off mic, had a family that about 5 or 6 individuals from the same family, and they just sort of rapid-fired questioned me for about 30 to 40 minutes afterward. And I remember, I always tell people I'll stick around after these seminars and answer as many questions as necessary until I have to leave wherever I'm at. And I remember I looked at my watch because I was the last person was heading out the door, and I looked at my watch, and it was like 4:30. And I thought, I can't believe it's 4:30, except for the fact my feet are a little tired. But other than that, I how the heck did it get to be 4:30? We were answering questions for over 2 hours.
Oh wow.
And I'm happy to do it because people, when they ask questions like that, they're not just general questions. They're pointed toward some experience they have, some thought they're thinking about.
Yeah.
And I had one person to come up and tell me, I went to this lawyer, and she goes, I won't tell you his name because you probably know him, but anyway. And she said, he says this and he says this. And sometimes I get questions like that, and it's the most bizarre thing I've ever heard. And it's like, well, before I jump on the fact that what this person said is wrong, I'm not sure I've got it all in context.
Right.
But I have never heard of any such requirement. And certainly what we do, there's no requirement for the trust that we do to do that. But, it's questions like that, things that they've actually had input on or thought process on or an experience about. And it's always good to answer those. So we had a couple of folks that had done some things, and now at my seminar, they're feeling like maybe that wasn't the right thing to do. And so we talked about corrective action, because usually, I used to have a friend that used to make a comment. He used to say, anything you get into, including something like pneumonia, you can get out of. You know what I mean? So no matter how bad things are, there's usually a curative action that will mitigate or turn it all around. So,
right.
Anyway, so like I said, we had a lot of good questions, and I was pretty wore out by the end of that one, but it was a great thing. So next one I got coming up is over here. Over again. And, we probably do a few more in Pulaski and Lawrence County than we do in the other places, but we do cycle about. And it's like another month. It's like November the 18th, so it'll be a little bit before the holidays begin. But that'll be over here at WLX, and we'll talk more about that as we get closer. So
now, is that a Saturday one?
That actually is a Saturday one, now that I think about it. That is a Saturday one, so it'll be 10 o'clock in the morning. For some reason, I think in Lawrence County, we have much better attendance when we do it on Saturday.
Yeah.
I say for some reason, I kind of think I know the reasons, but life gets in the way during the week. It's difficult in the middle of the day, stuff
Sure.
like that. So,
Sure.
But I did have one comment yesterday that just warmed my heart in a way. Afterward, I asked folks, was this helpful? And they all said yes. Many folks came up to me afterward and said that was the most detailed seminar I think I've ever been at. The most, it was a little intense, but most detailed. They said they learned so much from it.
Yes.
But there was a gentleman that sat in the audience, and during the question and answer, we were talking about our asset protection trust, which sometimes I say, the solution to going broke in long-term care, right?
Yes.
And he said what I always think, but I don't like to say it because I don't like to be presupposing. I like the product to sell itself and that sort of thing. But he just said, after everything you've explained about this trust, he said, who wouldn't do this? Who would not do this? And I looked at him and I said, that's sort of my thought too, but I don't want to be condescending by saying that. You know what I mean? I think once you hear it, I think that's what 99% of the people conclusion they come to is this is such a grand planning tool.
Yes.
And some of the stuff I don't even talk about at the seminars that makes it a grand planning tool, like the times those things go to the courts and the courts say, this is a viable planning solution. We'll uphold these trusts if they're done right, And so even not only do they sound like a good idea when I talk about them, once you do them, we got the full force and effect of the courts behind us saying that they will enforce these trusts. They're okay. That's allowed under the rules, and if you do them right, they will enforce this creditor protection and stuff. So it was really nice to hear somebody else come up with the concept and say, why wouldn't you do this? And I say that to myself because the first one I did was for myself. And it's like, I'm convinced it's one of the greatest things we can do. And here in Tennessee, they work very well. They're very well enforced by our courts. Our trust laws are very strong and in favor of the Tennesseans and the people that do it. It is just a grand planning tool, and it's underutilized because people don't hear about it. They don't know about it. They come to my seminar, but in all reality, I have my seminars, but sometimes I feel like I'm barely putting a dent in getting the information out there. I do the best I can. I do this radio show. I do the one in Nashville.
Yes.
So I'm doing everything I can to let people know this is an option that you've never heard of before. And when you hear it, it's usually attractive to people. But like I said, I try to get it out. I'm doing the best I can. So,
I think and I've been of the same mindset myself. Didn't think that a trust was something that I had to think about because I didn't think I had the assets that would justify trying to have what I thought of as being a trust.
Right.
But that was a misunderstanding of what this does and what this is. Yeah. And you're right. I've had the exact same thought after listening to you for the time that we've had together. I've decided that, everybody should consider this.
I think so.
Everybody, no matter what your station in life, should consider if this is something that they should do. And probably once they find out the details, you're going to probably come down on the side of, this is exactly what we should do.
And, there's a couple different kinds of trust. So you may not be interested. I know we talk a lot about long-term care.
Right.
When folks that are a little more advanced in years, like myself, they're concerned about that. But if that's not a concern, or if you're in midlife, I get it. That's usually I get a lot of folks in their 30s and 40s that want to do the trust, but it's not the trust where you protect your assets from like long-term care. Okay.
Right.
And people who say in their 30s or 40s say things like, I'm not really worried about the nursing home just yet. Kind of like I said in my 30s and 40s. I said, I'm going to worry about that later. I get it. So, we still do the planning the trust plans that don't solve that problem. But when the time comes and that becomes important to you, it's good to know that option is available.
You say the asset protection trust as opposed to just a simple trust.
Well, when you have a regular trust, revocable trust, the difference between the two is if you want to protect, if you're the trust maker, we call that the trustor. If you're the trust maker and you want to protect the assets in the trust from your creditors during your lifetime.
Yes.
Okay, so when you think about that, the creditor most people are worried about is going into the nursing home, right?
Right.
But a regular trust doesn't do that. That's the only limitation it has is it doesn't protect you from your creditors during your lifetime because you have complete access and control of all the property in the trust. You can put it in, you can take it out, you can spend it, you can do whatever you want. no limitations of what you want to do with it. When you go for an asset protection trust, we have to give something up to get the creditor protection. And I talked about it several times on this show and about what we're giving up is this access to the principal. But then again, I talk about how we can get to the principal through a distribution of a right that we retain on this thing. But so I tell people you can't get at the property in this trust unless you get at it a specific way.
Yes.
If you do it a specific way, then it's okay to get at it.
Yes.
You can't just go in, take it out, and give it to yourself. If you do, the concept I tell people to memorize: if you can get at an asset, your creditors can get at it. So
Yes.
if you can just go into this trust and take property out and give it to yourself, you have access to it. And if you have access, now they have access. And they're going to find that. And they're going to say, look, I see where you could go in this trust and take out whatever you wanted. Therefore, it's all available to us for cost of care because you can get at it.
Yes.
And so if you can get at it, just like money in the bank. If you got a bank account and you go into care, they're going to say, do you have any money? You say, yeah, I got money in the bank. And it's okay, it's a countable asset. It's available for the cost of care.
Yes.
And so we're trying to create a situation where it's not available to us. It's in this trust. It's in your trust for your benefit, but you don't even have the authority to take it out and give it to yourselves. But if you do, it kind of violates the terms of the trust, and that kind of taints the creditor protection we're trying to build. So, that's the difference between the two. And so if you asset protection is an extra benefit that the maker of the trust has. But in a revocable living trust, because you're the maker of the trust, you're the trustee, and you're also the beneficiary, you have unlimited access and control of everything. And when you have unlimited access and control, you can get at it, so now they can get at it. So so during midlife, and when I say that, I don't belittle the value of the revocable living trust in the least. It is a grand tool. We do a lot of them, mostly for folks in midlife, 30s and 40s, that the nursing home just not on their radar. And I get that. Wasn't on my radar at that time either. And so, we do that. But if you are later in years and you've already amassed a lot of your wealth, you're ready to retire, you're kind of looking at life as, okay, I'm almost done with my working life. It's time to start living off what I've amassed, or what am I going to do? And you're concerned that, okay, if my wife or I or some loved one goes into some kind of long-term care, I hear how expensive it is. I've always said that around here the average is $8,500. It has just changed. Almost all nursing homes went from about $286 a day to $305 a day. So that puts it at $9,000 a month average. So when you hear about how expensive it is, you start thinking, well, what if? And I want to protect stuff. That's when the asset protection trust usually becomes important to people. It's like, okay, can we do this? And the answer is, yeah, you can do the asset protection trust. Then we just put the property into it, and we have this limited access to it. We have control over it. We can get at it if we need it. We have all the good parts of it, but we can still creditor protect it. And of course, the creditor you're worried about is the future creditor of long-term care.
Sure.
And that's how that works. So.
Yeah. The asset protection trust is kind of clear to me. Okay. I understand, after talking with you, that I understand the reasoning behind it, and I understand how that you're giving up, the personal access in and out, that kind of thing, and the ways to possibly benefit, all the ways you benefit from that. So, but my question would be, okay, so what's the benefit of a revocable trust?
Okay.
What are the benefits of doing that?
The biggest benefit of a revocable trust is when you put property into that.
Yes.
I said, you don't get the asset protection, but what you get is everything that's in this trust, which should be everything you own, it all passes probate free. It triggers the trust code for descent and distribution. And so when we decide to distribute at death and we want to distribute the property, or if you're a couple, when we talk about the second death, you can distribute property, and you do it in accordance with what the trust says. So we have written this trust. Now the next big advantage of the revocable living trust, or any trust for that matter, is we put in there how the property gets distributed after death. And we can be specific, we can be conditional, we can put terms and conditions and tie strings to the inheritance. We can do all that, and all those things are enforceable. None of that you do when property goes through probate. Let me put it this way. You can, but it's a very cumbersome way to do it.
Yes.
You have to do what is called a testamentary trust, and I just don't think that's a grand way to go. But you put it in trust, and you say, okay, I want to leave it to my kids. One of them has a problem with finances, so I want him to get his inheritance, a third of it at 25, a third at 30, and a third at 30 years old, okay, or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so this trust stays open for this time, and you distribute this property in accordance to exactly what that says. So at those dates,
Okay.
they get their money. Or you can put whatever kind of terms and conditions on there. We talked, 1 week or a couple weeks about, maybe you have a child with an alcohol or drug problem. I bring that up because we see it a lot, and it's kind of an easy one to imagine in your mind.
Okay.
Even if you don't have that, you can see where, okay, I got a child, and I love him because he's my child,
Yeah.
but I don't love what he's doing.
Right.
But if I leave him an inheritance, what's he going to do with it? And I don't want to be the instrument of his destruction. Let's say you got a bad method. From my criminal law days, methamphetamine or cocaine habit, the things that actually kill people, right?
Yeah, bad deal.
Or fentanyl, that sort of stuff, the painkillers. If you leave an adult child, a bunch of money that has a drug addiction, you are probably more than likely going to be the instrument of his destruction because they're going to use it, and things are going to get worse. And so, if you're in probate, that's what it is. They get it, and ownership is complete. You can't put conditions on it. But so the other option then is, I guess I just have to leave him nothing and disinherit him, and that's not a good option either. How about we put our property into a trust, and then we write in there, okay, here's my son. His name is Joe. He has a drug or alcohol problem, and I don't want this inheritance to have anything to do with furthering that destructive habit. Okay, so we don't leave the money to him. We leave it to him in trust. We maybe put somebody else over the trust, and their job is to make sure it's not used for a drug or alcohol problem. Now, how do they do that? Well, the individual has to, if he wants money, he's got to go to the trustee to get it.
Yes.
Here's an example. You got the beneficiary says, I want $5,000 out of my trust. The trustee says, what do you want it for? He says, well, I'm not going to tell you. Okay, I'm talking about somebody with an addiction, right?
Right.
The trustee says, well, then I'm not going to give it to you because I don't know what you're going to use it for. So we can control it. Now, suppose things start working out for the better. And they say, well, I need some money out of my trust. And they say, what for? Well, I'm putting myself into rehab, and here's the bill. And this is what's going to cost. Okay, so now the trustee can say, okay, that's a purpose that this was left for, possibly to do that. Or maybe they want to go to Columbia State over here, and here's the tuition. And they can say, great, give me the bill, and I'll pay it.
Yeah.
So the money's there. It's for their benefit. It can be used to help them get past this problem. And then if they do get past this problem, then it can also help them like a regular inheritance would. Because a lot of times what we do in those situations, we create the subtrust where somebody holds the property for their benefit and controls it. But we can put termination language in there that says, okay, if the trustee says, okay, a period of 3 years has gone by, or 5 years, or whatever you want to say, where there's no sign of drug or alcohol issues.
Okay.
The trust of its own terms can say, okay, now we're going to, my term as trustee is going to terminate, and the trusteeship can now go to the individual who now doesn't have the problem anymore. And the reason it can do that is because the problem we created this control for no longer exists.
Well, my question, and this may be a dumb question.
No, remember what I said about that.
But can a will do this at all if you spell out those kind of conditions in a will?
Here's the problem with a will. The answer to that is kind of yes.
Yeah, because I've heard of you see the drama TV shows where they're going to sit down and read the will and all those kind of things and they say it's going to happen this way, and they refer to it as the will.
Well, the only way to do it is in the will you can set up a trust, and it's got a special name. It's called a testamentary trust, which means the trust creates it. Now, here's the problem: if a will goes into probate, and the court proves the existence of the will, and you have a probate action, and now during the probate action, the probate instrument, which is the last will and testament, creates a trust, which is called a testamentary trust.
Yeah.
That trust is now governed and controlled by the probate court.
Okay.
So my position is, if a trust by itself never goes into probate, complete probate avoidance technique, why would anybody want a probate that's opened by a trust that's opened by the probate court and is governed and controlled by the probate court, and typically can stay open for as long as the probate can stay open as long as the testamentary trust is there.
Okay.
There's ways for it to terminate without it, but why? I don't get it. Why don't we just have a trust and never go to probate court in the first place and get the identical, if not easier, result? Because now we don't have to deal with all the players in probate. We're just doing what the trust says to do.
Well, that reminds me that you pointed out here that if it does go to probate, then it's all public record.
That's exactly
as
right.
well. So
that's exactly
so
right.
and it's controlled more so, or can be, by the court, and can be challenged, which is another.
Well, and probate
bad
court
thing.
is open to challenge. You know, everything you do, they're going to put out notice to all the parties, and if
Yes.
anybody wants to object to it, like
Yes.
let's say you have a testamentary trust, and in there it says, I make my daughter the trustee over
Right.
Joe's testamentary trust. Okay. Well, the court puts that out, and anybody there can say, you know what, I don't think that's the good person to be the trustee. I want to oppose that or object to it, or something. You
Right.
can do all that. Now, I really appreciate your thought process, because it shows me you hit the nail right on the head when you said, you know, I talked before that everything in probate is public.
Right.
So if you have a testamentary trust in probate, there's nothing that says, okay, well, we have a very personal testamentary trust in here, so that's not going to be public. No, it's not that way at all. That is the probate process is public, and everything in it is public. Sometimes the only exceptions are when you get into juvenile stuff. Okay, those tend to be a little more guarded, because they're juvenile, right? But you know,
Yeah.
absent that, it is wide open. And
Yeah,
why bother? You can do everything without the ball and chain of the probate court. You can have a regular trust that says the exact same terms.
Right.
I think the testamentary trust is old school. I mean,
Yeah.
I know lawyers that do it, and they still do it. I think there's a better way. Now, it's just my opinion. I can defend that opinion, but you know, it's open to debate, I suppose. But
Yeah.
so the answer is, you can do what you said with a testamentary trust. But if somebody wants to do that, I think we ought to sit down and explain to them how that works and what goes with that.
Right.
You know what I mean? I often say, you know, people will say, "Oh, I want to do this, but I worry about this. I want to give some property to my child, but I worry about this 5-year look-back rule." You can do this stuff. You just need to understand the baggage that comes with
Yeah.
it. You know what I mean? There's nothing that says you can't do it. It's not always the best idea, because it has baggage that comes with it, or disadvantages that come with it, but you can still certainly do it. Nothing prevents you from doing it. So, you know, if you want to have a testamentary trust, you can do it. But I think you ought to know and understand what your heirs are going to go through when you do that. And
Yeah.
then if you still want to do it, then do it. But if you don't, do something better.
In the scenario where a person has a will and it goes to probate, and let's say this a nephew from out of nowhere comes and challenges the will, blah blah blah, he can do that, and he has an avenue to do that through the courts. But if I'm understanding things right, but if you don't have that, and you've set up a trust, and your will is executed, your wishes are executed through that trust, there's not a way for someone to challenge that, is there?
Well, we talked about this, and it is possible to challenge it. But here's the big difference. In other words, I have people ask me that all the time. Say, if I do this trust, can my kids challenge it? And it's like, I can't control what your kids do. Okay. Now, if you have one that wants to challenge it, they can. Now, it's not as easy as in probate, because now they have to file an action and create a court action, because when we're doing the trust, we're not in court.
Okay.
So first they have to do that. Second of all, the trust laws are very strong. And the trust laws, you know, here's the thing. What is it you're going to challenge? If you're going to challenge that you didn't get enough money, or the percentages, you know, you should deserve
Right.
more,
Right.
that is a tough row to hoe, because the courts say we will enforce what's written in this trust.
Yeah.
And it goes further than that. If you read we talk about the Tennessee Code annotated. If you read the annotations, which are the notes, the legislature says the trustor, that's the maker of the trust,
Yeah. Yeah.
their intent is paramount. And absent compelling evidence, well, they'll not disturb it.
Yeah.
So if you go in there and say, I don't think I got enough money, I mean, it's not enough. You got to prove there's a reason why. Also, we have a no contest clause that is not enforced in probate.
Yeah.
The courts to give it 0 weight.
Yeah.
Under the trust, they're given 100% weight. It's 100% enforceable. So if you challenge it, so it's not that you can't challenge, but if you challenge it, you lose anything you're going to get. It's a very harsh result if you challenge it, and that's the way it should be.
Yeah.
So people can challenge, you can file an action against a trust. I think that's somewhat pure stupidity, but if you do, it's very hard to be successful. Now, if somebody wants to challenge that they're not getting enough, then it's usually, if it's written in the document that you get 10% instead of 50 or 0%, that's almost an impossible burden to show that you should have gotten something more. I mean, the person that left it to you is not around anymore.
Yeah.
His wishes are in this document, so that's where they're going to stick to. Absent something to make them think should change their mind. Now, I don't know what that could be.
Yeah.
So when people can't do that, they say that's going to be impossible. So what they do is they turn around and they attack the instrument itself, the formation of it. They say, well, Dad didn't have the capacity to do that when he did that trust. He wasn't of sound mind when he signed that, or you unduly influenced him. You told him bad things about me, and he wrote me out of the trust and stuff. They attack the formation of it.
Yeah.
And again, that's also a tough row to hoe because you got to prove the person was not of sound mind when they did it, and they're not here. Mm-hmm. And you have to do that usually with medical proof, people that witness the person's demeanor and stuff, and that is very hard.
Yeah, I guess that's why after talking with you like I have, I've realized the importance of those of us who are at a certain stage in life going through this process and looking at your assets and your inevitable future of the fact that we're not going to be here forever.
That's right.
And somebody's going to have to take care of whatever you leave behind. And so there's a way to make sure that what you've accumulated gets handled in a way that you want it. I had a call a while back, and it made me think about this. Someone wanted to divide up their land in a certain way. They'd called me for a certain reason, and just in the conversation, I can't remember who this was. It's been a while, but in the conversation, I gathered that they were trying to divide up their land themselves, and we're going to put the land in one of them's name over here and another name over there, so he could get it done like he wanted. And all I kept thinking, because I talked to you enough, all I kept thinking was he needs to talk to Stan or somebody that does what Stan does before he makes all these moves, because things will not work out necessarily like you think they're going to work out.
Well, if he was talking about actually drawing lines and establishing new metes and bounds.
Yeah, he was going to divide property and put this in this name and this and that. And I'm like, in my head, I'm thinking, I need to tell him he needs to see Stan Pierchoski or someone like him.
There's a right way to do it and a wrong way, but I mean, what he's doing is a valid way to approach it. If you have a piece of land and you're going to leave it to 3 kids, and you just say, I leave my one piece of land to my 3 children, I mean, it starts immediately to be kind of a nebulous way to own property. You now have 3 people that have a 1/3 undivided interest in it, but there's no lines drawn at this point. There are no lines. So when you do that, you actually have what we call all 3 owners have equal right of possession, equal right of entry, which means you take number 1. He can do whatever he wants with the entire property. But if it ever sells, he only gets 1/3 of the value, right? Number 2 can do whatever they want with the entire property. And same thing with number 3. Now, if you have 3 people that can do whatever they want with the entire property, what if what number 1 wants to do with it is in complete conflict with what so number 1 wants to farm it. He wants to grow corn. Yeah. But number 2 wants to build a golf course or an amusement park on the thing, right?
Yeah.
Those are inconsistent uses, right?
Those are incompatible.
I mean, they can't coexist. So now what? Okay, what can we do? They both have equal right of entry and equal right of possession. That's when the problem begins. Now, what this gentleman's suggesting is a solution. Okay, if I have a piece of land and let's just say for round numbers, it's 300 acres and I got 3 kids. Right. I'm going to draw a line here, give this 100 acres to one, draw a line here. Or when I say draw a line, you got to get it surveyed.
Get it surveyed, yeah.
And then create a whole. Now we have 1 deed for 300 acres. When I'm done, I want to create 3 deeds, 100 acres each.
Right.
I want to give this one to child 1, this one to child 2, this one to child 3.
Yeah.
That's a great idea, but here's the problems that go with that. But it can be done. When you draw those lines, it's very dependent on the original property because you got to deal with equal road frontage type of stuff. Mm-hmm. Is there a house on one? There's usually a house there somewhere that increase. So if the person with the 100 acres has got a house built on it, gets a bigger value because there's already a house there. Stuff like that. So drawing lines is not as easy as you think. Now it could be. I often say, and I say this in jest, but I kind of really mean it. Ideally, the ideal situation is you have 3 children, you own 3 pieces of property, and they're all of identical value, and you say this one goes to you, this one goes to you, and that one goes to you. That would be an ideal outcome.
That's almost doesn't exist.
It's right, but this gentleman you're talking about was heading in that direction to the best he could do. Right.
Yeah.
We have a piece of property now that actually is in litigation. The trust is not in litigation, but it's almost it's a very difficult piece of property to divide up, to draw lines on, and be fair, because we got 4 different heirs, and to get a fourth of it that's equal value to the other 3/4.
Right.
You got, like any other land, you got some land with road frontage, and you got some stuff that's valuable, and then you got some hills that look like all they do is hold up part of the world. You know what I mean. It's hard to draw the lines and get this identical value, and so we're almost dealing with a partition suit where we're trying to see if we can cut it up and make everybody happy. It's hard because of the nature of the property.
Yeah.
So you run into that. So what do he should talk to somebody like me, because we can do that and you can do it right. And when you do that, you need to do it with the intent of the heirs complaining about it in the future. So when we do it, in other words, when we divide it up, we can look at that and say, here's something this person may be concerned about if you give it to them. Here's something this person that gets parcel number 2 is going to be concerned about. And how can we make this as equal as possible? Now, and here's a way you can do it. Another way that would be ideal. Suppose you have a piece of property and there's no good way to cut it up, so you give the entire piece of property to one child. Now we leave the other 2 children money that's of same value as the property.
Mm-hmm.
So have we not been equal, at least from a value standpoint, right?
Yes.
And we have. So that's another way. But usually, people who have assets, they usually put a lot of their assets into the land and don't have that much money in the bank. But if you do, that thought process will work too if you can leave it with others.
Right.
Sometimes we do that. We let maybe 1 or 2 of the children want to stay with the property, and one has moved off to Florida and really doesn't want to be a co-owner of Tennessee property. We make provisions for that one to be bought out by the other 2. That way they don't have to force a partition sale, stuff like that. So there's a lot of things we can do to try to anticipate this problem and make sure it does go smooth. But when you leave land to your kids, it needs some thought process, because it can be problematic. Just saying I leave all my land to my kids, that sounds pretty simple, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Well,
it sounds simple, but it's not that. It's not never that.
Well,
simple.
you're in the real estate business, so let's
never that simple.
Let's fast forward to when the property goes to the kids. What exactly do they own? And here's where I see big problems. Let's just take 2 children and 1 piece of land. Let's make it easy.
Right.
And one wants to stay there and do whatever on the land. Maybe it's a farming, maybe it's a working farm. The other one is, fast track, lives in the city and says, I don't really want to own a piece of land. I just want the value for it.
Right.
So buy me out. What if the other one, who really, really wants to be there, can't buy them out or won't buy them out?
Right.
If they can't buy them out, then the other one isn't. I get a lot of people say, well, if he wants to sell, I'm just not going to buy it, and then he's stuck owning it. Yeah, it doesn't work that way. When you leave property like that, that person's title is unmarketable. The courts have said that's an unmarketable title, because if the person that wants to sell his half of this farm that the other one's using says, okay, I'm going to sell it, so I go get a realtor and let's list it, you will not find a buyer for that piece of property. It's a third-party buyer who's going to buy a piece of property that's co-owned with somebody they don't even know, using it for something, and they want to buy it, and they may have a reason to use the property, but you both have this equal right of possession, equal right of entry. It is unmarketable. And the courts have said it's unmarketable. The only person that would buy that property would be the other owner.
Yeah.
Only in reality. I guess it's possible you could find somebody that would, but it's just very rare. It's definitely the exception. So because of that, the courts will say this is an unmarketable title. And if that person says, that person can go to court and force a partition sale. And the courts will do that.
That's where I thought you were headed.
Yeah, and so the remedy is, I don't want this piece of property. I want it bought out. The other person just says, I'm not going to do it. Okay, so
can't do it.
Or the other thing, if they can't do it, they can. Now they can force the sale, and now the person that forced the sale gets their money. The person that wants the property gets their half of the money, but now they don't have the property.
Right.
So
I've seen this.
It's not a good situation for somebody's going to be a loser.
And I see this quite often.
Yeah, I'm sure you do.
I see this quite often, and not everybody's always in a squabble or anything like that, but I have seen it where, you've got a property owner family that, and one of them would like to hold on to everything, and the other one's like, well, no, we won't really need it. We need to sell it all.
Right.
And the one who wants to keep it really can't afford to keep it all. So the sale is actually forced. Most of the time it's done without having to go to court, because they understand, it's got to happen. So that kind of thing. But every once in a while, It's drug out all the way.
When it gets into court, it is a long process. Every bit of 18 months.
Yeah.
And I don't even want to talk about the cost.
Yeah.
It's going to be extremely expensive. When people start realizing that, that forces them to the negotiation table.
Yes.
Now, maybe the person that can't buy it could buy it if they could buy it over 5 years.
Yeah.
Or something like that. And so we start working out a deal. In other words, instead of giving me lump sum cash, give me a check for $200,000, let's work something out. You know what I mean? So
find a solution.
Or let me borrow and pay you off. There's ways to do that. That's usually how that works. But
that's probably one of the most rewarding things that can happen in what I do and probably in what you do is when you can find a solution to a problem for a family that's maybe they're sideways with each other a little bit, but we finally find a way to make it work for everybody.
It is rewarding, and they do have sometimes that can be extremely frustrating because people are just people can be just unreasonable.
Yeah, it happens.
And when you're unreasonable, you really shoot yourself in the foot, or what they used to call cut off your nose to spite your face. Their decisions are self-destructive. They're just vindictive. I'm not going to do it just because the other person wants me to do it. Stuff like that. And I can't wrap my head around that concept because. I am in solution mode. I mean, if you've got a problem, everybody wants to talk about how we got here, right?
Yeah.
It's your fault. You did this. If you hadn't done this, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
On and on. And it's so much simpler to say, okay, we got a problem.
Yeah.
There's hindsight is not a solution. Hindsight is nothing but a bunch of bickering, a bunch of hard feelings, burning bridges. How about we got a problem? Let's embrace the problem, move forward towards a solution.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
That's in everybody's best interest.
It is.
So people just can't get there. I mean, I'm not a counselor, so I don't help them get there. But I mean, I have seen that. It's definitely, it's not as often as the other one. Most people see the light and say, "All right, let's just resolve this." But it does create hard feelings, and that's one of the only things I dislike that I see in what I do. Is sometimes I see some ugliness in families when they get to fighting about stuff.
Yeah,
and I hate it. And I've seen people destroy relationships over a shotgun.
Yeah, it happens.
And I get the concept of this is a shotgun. It's got a lot of sentimental value, but surely to gosh, there's a solution here.
Yeah,
there's no reason for family ties, which are so important, to be destroyed or these bridges burned over property that you're inheriting.
Yeah.
There's ways around that, and so a lot of that stuff we want to think about while we're during life when we're putting these plans together.
Well, see, that's the key there for those of us who are here and listening to this at this point. Is you can avoid most of that for your children and for those that you are leaving behind. You can put them in a place where they never have to argue about it.
I had a client that had a couple of he restored cars, just antique cars, making them nice. And I don't know, they had some value and probably decent value, but wasn't get rich quick kind of value. But it was cool stuff.
Yeah.
And he knew he had some children. He knew they were going to fight over it. Okay. He said, my kid's going to fight over these cars. What he decided to do, this is just a solution, but not a bad one.
Yeah.
He put in there whatever cars he had, those restored cars he had, his trustee, we use strong language to say the trustee shall. Now there's should, shall, and may.
Yes.
Shall leaves no doubt for what has to be done.
I like the word shall.
There is no, okay, but I don't have to. Or, should and may have some play.
Yeah.
Shall does not. So he says, my trustee shall sell these cards and divide the proceeds. Now, is that going to make some of them mad? Maybe, but they're going to be mad at Dad for doing that, not each other.
Right.
And so he was sort of falling on the sword in a way, but he said, listen, I don't want this conflict between them.
Yeah.
And they know they like it, they're going to fight over it, so I'm just, I don't want to put them in a position to work out a solution where they're going to hate each other. If they want to hate something, they're going to be mad at somebody, they're going to be mad at me. So I'm going to sell it, and they all get equal money. So they can't fight with each other. At least that's his theory, and I think it's a good thought. And I don't think they'll be mad at Dad at all. I think they'll see exactly what he wanted to do.
Sure.
Now, look at it this way. Shall sell the vehicles, right?
Yes.
That solves the problem. Well, what about, let's go the next step and say, could somebody who really, really wants these, could they be a buyer?
Which brings about a whole new dynamic.
They're about to get some money, right?
Yes.
So would that offend anything? Of course not. It wouldn't make any bad blood either. So, if you're going to sell the cars, these people can certainly participate in the sale, can they not? And so that's a way. It's starting to look more and more doable.
Sure.
Look at it that way.
Sure.
It's not just as simple as here. You get these neat cars, they're yours, and you put it in the garage and lock the door and not let anybody else in there to see them. It doesn't work that way all the time.
That's right.
But there are solutions to these problems. And most of them are not hard to find. And a lot of times when people present the problem to me, I can't tell you how to run your family, but when you tell me what the problems are, I can really spitball some possibilities and ideas.
Yeah.
And then there's people, they kind of start with that, and then we kind of hone in on a solution. Yeah. 99 times out of 100, we get there.
We should mention, I think, that we are talking with Stan Pierchoski Law in Pulaski, on the square in Pulaski, right? Estate law. And Bulletproof Estate Planning is what we're doing here, is the name of the program. And, of course, your office is located on the square in Pulaski there next to the Star Theater.
That's right.
You got a phone number, I'm sure.
Right there in the corner. My phone number's right behind you, but you always write it down. You always write it down.
Yes.
But no, my phone number over there is 931-363-7222.
That's right.
And I have a website. It's PierchoskiEstatelaw.com, but you can get there easily by typing in estateplanstan.com.
Yeah, and we should also mention that we'll take a phone call here if you've got somebody that wants to talk with us on the air here. That's perfectly fine. A lot of people that listen know the number, but 766-9393. That's 931-766-9393.
Why is it we forget that? Bring it up at the
I
end.
always forget it,
I
too.
do, too. But, I've said several times, and hopefully if people listen to me, more on a routine basis, we've said this is an interactive show. We do encourage that. So if we forget to give you the number, call in anyway.
Yep. I like the solution part. Bringing about a solution to potential problems and avoiding potential problems. That's what this is about, especially when it comes to your estate and estate planning.
Could make your job easier when these estates come to you.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we enjoy what we do. We really, really do. And get to interact with families, and for the most part, I'd say 99% of the time, everybody's on board and we're doing what we need to do, all that kind of stuff. But every once in a while, something hasn't been left like it should have been left, and it's in question, and then that's when it happens. That's when things get kind of.
And to be honest with you, I deal with a lot of other attorneys in other places, and here where we're located geographically, here in the South or here in Tennessee, people are reasonable people. And they're, they're good old folks, so to speak.
Yeah.
They know right from wrong.
Right.
And they're strong on family ties, and they're not real anxious to pull the hate card and get they want to sit down and discuss it. This is what Daddy wanted, and that's okay with me. And so we see it occasionally, but when people I talk to in some of these other bizarre states, like New York or places, or Maryland. If you're from there and you're offended, too bad. I've seen enough of it to know that I don't want to be there.
It's a different culture.
And I don't want to practice there.
Yeah, it's a different culture.
And it's the norm to be at each other's throat in places like that. I don't get it. And that's a little too high stress for me. I don't want to get dragged into the family battles.
Yeah.
There's nothing I can do about it, nothing I can do to fix it, nothing I can do to prevent it either.
Yeah.
So it's, you just don't need that in there. But down here, sometimes people get a little crossways, but usually it smooths out, and I appreciate that, because that's just kind of the folks that are here.
Right.
They're reasonable folks. They're Christian folks. They adhere to biblical concepts, and they know how important family is. And even though you might get your feathers ruffled a little bit, that's all it is a ruffling of feathers. It's not the end of the world.
Right.
And it's what family doesn't? Some of the families that love each other the most get into knockdown dragouts, right? And it's just an expression of love, really.
Sure.
If you don't care about somebody, you wouldn't even care enough to argue with them.
Right.
You just walk away from them, right?
Yeah.
But if you're going to argue and fight and tell somebody your opinion, it's only out of love that you do that. From what I've seen. So, like I said, these kind of things exist, but don't see them as often as other people have to deal with them in other places. So we're good folks here, and that's. And I've always thought that, and that's what attracts me. I love being where I'm at.
Yeah.
People say, well, I talk to these attorneys that do what you do up in Nashville, and they charge 3 and 4 times what you charge. And it's like, what should my thought process? Well, I should go to Nashville where I can make more money. And saying, no, I don't want. I'm happy with my pricing.
Right.
I think it's reasonable. It's what I got into it. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
If I can charge 3 or 4 times more for what I do anyway, I'm not comfortable with that. Yeah. It sounds great, and it's like, wow, that'd be great, but I can resist that and say, wait a minute, it's not worth 3 or 4 times, in my opinion, because I'm not doing any more.
Yeah.
I'm just in a place where it would command more cost, and I'm not. that doesn't attract me. So I like being where I'm at. I like being in small town Tennessee.
Yeah.
And I like dealing with small town, middle Tennessee people. They're good people. They're reasonable people, and it makes me love what I do every day. And I do love, I was an engineer for 20 years, and I do love when people give me these problems that I got to solve.
Yeah. Well, we're getting a call. I'm not sure where this may come or go, but let's see what we've got.
We got a few minutes.
Hey, good morning. You're on WDXE with us.
Yes, I wanted to speak to one of the ladies that's doing the cancer thing this morning.
Okay. Well, you need to call 762
Okay.
6200. Okay.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right. Thank you. Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem.
That's a different station because sometimes we get a bleed over on this.
Well, you got several stations here.
We got 3 of them in here. So.
Yeah.
So they're doing a fundraising kind of thing.
Gotcha.
Going on right now.
Is that on the X over there?
On the X and on the other station as well, I think. So.
I know sometimes when I'm speaking to folks and I talk about, I'm on the radio in Lawrenceburg on Friday mornings, I got to stop and think of the numbers.
Yes.
It's 103, 103.5. That's right.
105.3.
105.3.
Yeah, we got it. 105.3, and of course, our old AM station is 1370. It doesn't spread out quite as far as some of the others, but hey, while we've got a couple more minutes, just a few more minutes, I know it's a little ways away. You had a great seminar yesterday. You said.
Yep.
A lot of folks, and I would encourage you to think about going to the next one, and it's around a month away.
Yeah, November the 18th.
But it'll be here in Lawrenceburg on the 18th, right here at the Country Cafe.
Yeah. You know what? When I'm advertising this one, I'm not going to use the words Country Cafe.
Are you not?
I'm going to tell why. I'm just going to say the WLX radio station
All right,
in the
there
back.
you go.
And the reason is, the Country Cafe, they dance there Friday night. I'm not sure what else they do, but I know they do that.
Yeah.
But it's not exactly open to the public, right? I've had people, I get people come to my seminars from pretty far away.
Yeah.
I think my record is 5 hours one way. And so last time we had somebody call and say, okay, well, we're going to come to your seminar. We'll just stick around there and have lunch at the cafe when you're done. It's like, well, it's not really that.
It's not a cafe.
It's not really a restaurant. That's hard to explain.
Yeah, it's not a cafe.
I've had people, almost every time I had somebody say to me or the girls at the door, I wasn't sure this was the place I was supposed to come in. I never saw a sign that said Country Cafe.
Yeah.
So,
You're right. You're right.
I'm going to resist using that term. I'm just going to say, back in the building at the WLX radio station right here on the Highway 43. They have an address. It's 1212 Locust Avenue, right? But
I need to mention that to Roger and see if we might want to put a sign on that door.
But and it's not open to the public. It's not a restaurant.
Yeah, it's not. Now, when they have their Friday evening music and dance, it is open to the public.
That's right. That's right.
But there's not a restaurant here. It's not a real cafe.
Well, they got a little kitchen there, and they have some refrigerators, but it's a big space because this building used to be a bowling alley.
Yeah.
And it's got a big space in the back. And they got the big stage with all the stuff because they pick and grin and
that's right
and play on Friday nights.
It's kind of like a hometown hee-haw show.
And they got a big space with tables they can roll out. They got round tables they bring out, and they put chairs around them, and they have a big spot open for dancing.
Yeah.
And it's like $5 per person, and they use that money to some sort of disaster relief, is what I understand.
Yeah.
I think they used to give it all the Red Cross, but since they're kind of not here anymore, they use it for the same purposes.
It's just hometown folks that get together and play and pick. And,
I've come a time or two, my wife and I. And but it's not a restaurant open to the public just come walking into for lunch.
No, it's not.
And when you say I'm giving it at the Country Cafe in Lawrence County, it gives that expectation.
Maybe we should think about making a real cafe back there.
And I think there's some people that have said, I didn't know that place was called the Country Cafe.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So I don't want people to get confused. But we just tell them put the address in the GPS and it'll bring you here. And I also say this: I say it's a big building, but if you look around when you get to Lawrenceburg, there's going to be a tower you see. It's the biggest thing you're going to see in all of Lawrenceburg.
Right,
it's a
big tower,
350-foot tall tower. And I said, literally, it's kind of like the end of the rainbow, where that tower touches the ground. There's a set of double doors.
Yep.
Come on in. You found the right place. That's the Country Cafe.
That's a good way to tell it. I've heard you tell that before, and that's actually a good way to tell everybody where we are. Because if you're in Lawrenceburg, you can see the top of that tower somewhere.
That's right. It's big.
And if you make your way there, you've made your way to the stations here and, of course, what we call the Country Cafe. So
but again, we just give you the address. You put in GPS. It'll bring you right to it. So,
that's right. That's right.
But anyway, that is coming up on November the 18th, which is a Saturday.
Right.
We're doing more and more Saturdays by popular request. We do Saturdays. We do it at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, yeah.
And it's typically, I try so hard to keep my presentation to an hour, but just can't seem to get it under an hour and 10, hour and 15. Yesterday was the same way. But at the end of it, we have question and answer. And you can bring questions with you, or if you develop them during the presentation, jot them down.
That seems to happen to me.
Jot them down, yeah. And then we have I often say I'll stay as long as I can to answer questions. I'll stay till the last question's answered, unless for some reason they're going to kick me out.
Yeah.
But yesterday was a good example. We were there until 4:30, and I was done with the presentation about 2:15.
Wow.
And so I was for 2 hours. I was answering questions.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I offer the time freely, and it helps people. It helps them.
Sure.
Because most people that come to my seminars are looking for this information. People don't just show up at my seminars because it seems like a fun thing to do. They've been looking for this information. They hear about it on the radio, or we do some kind of advertising. I don't even do that, but they hear that we're doing it, and that sort of rings a bell with them. It's like, I've been trying to figure out how this works, and I can't find the information.
Sure.
Or what I'm finding is all over the place.
Yeah.
I don't know what to believe. And so they come to it. So we try to address that misinformation. So the people that want to come to seminars are already thinking about this topic, this subject matter, at least in a general sense. So come to this. If you hadn't been to one before, it's worth coming to the live ones. Now I get such raving reviews. Now I don't say that to pat myself on the back. I say that because that's exactly the effect that I want, and it just seems like we're achieving that. We're getting it. So come to it, be open-minded, be prepared to hear things you might not have heard before. But when you hear things that you haven't heard before and they turn out to be great things, then that's cause for good news, right? You're going to hear about options you didn't know exist, and they're good options.
Yeah,
they're very
absolutely.
good options. And it's like, good grief, can we really do that? And then you might be like the gentleman yesterday that says, who wouldn't do this?
Who would not do this?
There's so
Yes.
much on the upside.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't do it?
Yeah.
And when you come to that conclusion, now you make a decision. Say, you know what, I want to do that. I want to do a trust plan. And now you've been involved in the decision. That's
Mm-hmm.
important to me. I don't ever want to talk somebody into something or talk somebody out of it. I've never been an attorney that says, here, you need this kind of trust. Here, sign here. Don't worry about what it says. I'll take care of all that for you. I don't do that. I have had clients that say, you don't have to explain it. Just tell me where to sign.
Yeah.
And I say, you know what? I don't do business that way, so I'm going to explain it anyway. If you don't want to listen, don't listen. But it's
need to
important
know.
to me that you know. And
Well,
so-
that's kind of what this has been about. With you coming and visiting us here this hour is to actually inform you as to what these tools are.
Yep.
And what they do.
often
And-
say my mission is to get this message out. And the
Yeah.
message is when it comes to estate planning, you've got options. You've
Yeah.
got a lot of options.
Yeah.
A lot of them you just may not have heard of
It's
yet.
just, the better you understand something like this, the better you can position yourself to make the things happen that you want to happen.
That's right.
That's
Listen,
right.
the big old clock behind you tells me I got 45 seconds. So
Yeah, we don't have a lot of time left, but Stan
give us-
Pierchoski, everybody.
Yeah, give us a call. Pierchoski Estate Law, Pierchoski Elder Law, 931-363-7222, or go to estateplanstan.com. You can see my calendar, get my email, and ask a question that way if you want to. Just call me. If you have a question, call. I'm more than happy to answer.
The theater,
Theater coming up, Dracula in the Round, tonight and tomorrow night, and next Friday and Saturday, 7 o'clock.
is it sold out,
No, but the seating's a little less than normal, but
Okay.
I think there's plenty of room.
Because that would be fun to go.
It's probably not one to bring the kids to. It's not adult content, but it's not a kid's show either.
Yeah.
It's Dracula.
Oh, it's Dracula.
And it's not a comedy or a musical type thing. It is definitely the story of Dracula. Also, October the 29th, upstairs, we have a haunted house that
Oh,
they've been working
cool.
on for over a month now.
That's
So,
awesome.
Yeah.
That's
No.
awesome. Thank you, Stan. I'll
Always
see
a
you
pleasure.
next time.
Always a pleasure, Jeff.
7FD Lawrenceburg, broadcast services of Prospect Communications.